We'll do this. Usually it's going to be last Saturday of the month. Some months this year I looked at, next month I'm going to be in a place where I don't have internet on the last Saturday, and we'll adjust as that happens. But typically last Saturday of the month, we'll do it at least once a month, and we'll do it as many Saturdays as is needed if people have unanswered questions or issues they want to talk about. But we'll start off each session with just a quick update on what I'm seeing from my perspective around Carlton Landing. And then we'll open the floor and let everyone have a chance to ask any question that they want. My hope is that this becomes a casual and constructive space for homeowners to connect, to ask questions, to stay in the loop together. But let me give a quick highlight, and I'm going to talk about what I've seen in March for the town, for the rural water district, for the association, just very short overviews. Last week, the town and the rural water district last Saturday, they had their meetings. And I'd really encourage folks, if you want to know what's going on, you can get in touch with Greg Buckley on those two, get a copy of the agenda. You can attend the meetings. Mary Myrick is our mayor, and you can stay informed through Greg or through Mary. But this past week when the town met, the main focus was on what we call the Nature Center main hall. This will be a large community and conference facility that'll be located on the town square just south of Ridgeline Road, where Water Street comes to an end. And that's going to be a real focus over the coming years. The first construction estimate came in close to around $5 million through some work and value engineering. We met with, and Jeremy Summer is the architect who's actually in town this weekend and has done phenomenal work. He's out of Norfolk, Virginia. He did the design work there. Thompson is the general contractor. They're out of Tulsa, and they've been doing some value engineering work to bring that cost down. We're looking at around $3.6 million now is the budget for the main hall. This is going to be a space where it can hold groups, 3 different rooms that can be opened up into one great hall, or they can be broken down into 3 separate sections. Total capacity is about 500 people. So we see conferences and business retreats and leadership retreats and that type of thing being a real key element for continued growth in Carlton Landing, because it typically couples well with the lake season. A lot of times that season spikes in the fall and the spring for conferences and retreats and corporate getaways. It avoids the family vacation season because of conflicts. And so it allows Carlton Landing to expand its season for high occupancy and really take advantage of those buffer seasons. The project, the main hall, is going to be funded, and that area that the town is looking at developing is funded by TIF. And so as you might know, TIF is where people pay their normal property taxes that they would pay either way. It goes to the county, and then because of a structure that we set up 10 years ago, it goes from the county, and the increment that we have grown since 2015 comes back to the town of Carlton Landing. And they take that increment and they monetize it through a revenue bond offering. And this year, Carlton Landing, the town of Carlton Landing, I think is receiving $3.2 million on a 10-year basis that's fully paid for by TIF. And that goes into the funds that can be then deployed into TIF projects. And TIF projects are anything from infrastructure to civic structures to parks, trails, economic development. Another meeting that we have that's important this week, the Rural Water District number 20. We had a group in town called SLR Consultants. They're an international environmental consulting firm that is coming on board. I've contracted with them between the SLR and the developer, but then am making their resources available to the water district. And I want to see the water district have resources that are available to them, so they have world-class expertise to allow them to perform well and to get out of a challenging situation with the DEQ. We've been in a challenging spot with the DEQ for 15 years. And the water district, it's led by Caleb Connor. Daryl Nieto has stepped back. He chaired that for many years. These are great people that serve on the water board. They're doing a great job. Greg Buckley heads that up as the manager. And then there's a staff that runs the plant operations, but they need world-class expertise to help them get to a place where they're performing well and get into a good shape with the DEQ. And we want to make that available to them. Yesterday, we met for several hours with SLR, who was in town. I walked on the plank on top of the wastewater treatment plant, which you really got to trust the structure underneath you as you're walking up there. And I think there's a strong sense of partnership. But we're having to really pull out all the stops to make sure that the water district gets in a good place with the DEQ so that the development moratorium can be lifted and Carlton Landing can grow. Quick update on the association. Had a good meeting yesterday with Stephen Coville, who's general manager of the association. The executive board met last week, a week before last. Top issues from that meeting: common area restrooms are open. Call Jim back in a minute. Common area restrooms are open. Grills have been cleaned and serviced. A buried culvert was uncovered on the south side of Boardwalk, which should improve drainage towards Lincoln Park. And this is a series of stormwater maintenance projects that are linking from Boardwalk up to Lincoln Park. And it's going across Block 12, across the alley, in about 4 different points, installing tin horns in there to improve drainage. They've had some hot tub issues from wind debris that's been resolved. The Lakeview pool gate is repaired. Gravel alley maintenance will start soon. It's covered under maintenance zone budgets, and that'll be ongoing until the alley maintenance paving project can be completed. But that will not happen until after the lake season, because it's about a 4 to 6 week total disruption for people that need access to their homes. And we have to find a contractor that gives us a reasonable bid. So that's a quick update for the association. If you have other questions about the association, contact Stephen Coville. Quick ground rules for today's call. So just a few quick things to help guide our time together. One, you can ask anything that you like, but let's keep it civil and constructive. Number two, this is a call for Carlton Landing owners only, so exclusively for you guys. So when you speak, I ask that you turn on your camera, you introduce yourself by name, and that you share the street address so that we can have the record of that. Number three, if a topic looks like it's going to go over 10 minutes, we might put a pin in it and then possibly come back to that later just to give space for others and cover as many topics as we can. Like I said at the beginning of the call, if we can't get to a full communication on all issues, then we'll set another date within the next 4 or 5 weeks, and we will continue to have these at least once a month, but as many weeks as is necessary. Number four, I'm not speaking on behalf of any official entity, and this is an important thing. I'm not representing the association or the town or the water district. I'm a guy who is I'm not on the board of any of those entities, but I have a proxy of a majority of the votes on the homeowners association through Seth Gebhardt. And I have knowledge of what's going on with each of those entities. So I'm sharing as a neighbor, sharing my opinions, and you're welcome to contact them for an official position on that entity. And then number five, this session is being recorded, so it'll be shared with the owners. I'm going to post these into AppFolio, so we'll have the video of this put into AppFolio. So if you're speaking or asking a question, you're agreeing to be part of that recorded archive. So that's the rundown. So first 10 minutes or so, 10, 12 minutes of each session will look like that, just to help people stay informed and know what's going on in Carlton Landing. Happy to take any questions.
Great. I appreciate you opening up the forum like that. I think it's a breath of fresh air, and I really congratulate you for doing that. And for everybody who's decided to join, I think it's a great opportunity. I'm Jim, 63 Ridgeline, and we've been Carlton Landing since 2018. So really enjoy it and have so many friends out there. And I really appreciate it, everything you've done. I really just have one question. I know there will be some things that come up. Are there plans for a fitness center in the works at all?
So right now, plans for a fitness center specifically, no, there are not. Okay. Now, I should say, when I say there's no plans, an architect is not engaged at this time to actually put together floor plans or structural or building plans. Would I like to see a fitness center and see that expanded into a community wellness center? Absolutely. Have I had a vision for seeing that funded as a very nice facility in a key location that would be a civic amenity that everyone could come to? 100%. That's been a dream of mine for a long time. And we set up TIF as the funding source for that. So that can be paid for by TIF. TIF, I think that today the Town of Carlton Landing has received about $9 million of funding for projects that's gone into things in Carlton Landing. I think over the next 17 years, the Town of Carlton Landing could receive another $40 million for projects. And so there is definitely a funding source that's identified. I don't have the location identified, Jim, but it would be something that would be in a key, either a view terminus, a waterfront destination point where people can come to that. It could be down in the town center neighborhood, most likely would be. I've had thoughts of putting it up on the hill by the overlook, but it would not just be a fitness center. It would be a full wellness center that would include multipurpose flex rooms, equipment, free weights. We've also had meetings. I'll tell you this. We've had meetings with a guy that owns a gym and fitness program. It's not just a gym where you have to go into it, but he actually has a program where he transmits his video training to people that subscribe to it. He's got multiple locations in Oklahoma City. And we thought that could be a cool opportunity for people that are coming from different places into Carlton Landing, that they could have a routine while they're here, but they could also take it back home with them. And the location that we discussed with him would be in the town square on the north side, just across from the new Nature Center main hall. And it could be on the north side there, even possibly behind retail. So you'd have retail as the storefronts, and then the wellness center would be tucked in on the backside of that. So
Can I ask a follow-up? Of course,
Sure. Yeah.
keep going to my mind. What about thoughts about since you mentioned health, about medical care close by, particularly as we grow older? That's kind of a sticking point for older people, I think.
So with the wellness center, taking that just a step further, what we discussed, and this is very preliminary and it's a few years outdated, so I haven't had discussions on this in a couple years, but what we discussed was having a wellness center that could be large enough to also have a clinical area, that could be a multifunction rotating clinic, so that you could partner with a range of different healthcare providers. One could be a family practice, one could be Stitches and Staples, kind of instant or quick care, like a small level Stitches and Staples emergency room.
Like
Could be
urgency care,
chiropractic.
care.
Yeah. And so you'd have that. And I think there's, as of a few years ago when I had this conversation last, there were health professionals that were like circuit riders that would go to multiple markets. And so we could set that up where they would be coming in every other Friday. And it would allow people in Carlton Landing to, start to have more of their health care here on a rotating basis. But I think that's probably most practical for a remote location like we've got.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Who's next? Guys are going to make it easy on me.
Hey Grant, this is Jason Knives with I'm at 69B Lower Greenway.
Yeah.
Just going to Pistache Park. So I'm with Thompson Construction.
Jason, can I see you? Do you use your camera work?
I don't have the camera on.
Okay,
this one
that's
right
all
now,
right.
so apologize for that, but
Just what?
happy to be part of the Nature Center project. We are based out of Tulsa, and I'm out of Oklahoma City.
Yep.
I'm a homeowner in Carlton Landing. I guess been a landowner since 2021 or 2020, somewhere around there, and homeowner since 2022. So I just want to comment on the meeting yesterday. It was very constructive, and it was just a good collaborative discussion. So glad to see that thing, making sure we're all on the same page. It's just a great meeting. So just want to say
No, thank you, Jason. Thanks for coming down. Did you make it to your son's flag football game?
Yep.
Good.
Good.
No, we are really thankful. I'll tell you, one of the big challenges that we've got in Carlton Landing is increasing our construction capacity. That was one thing I did not understand how critical that was when we first started the project, when we planned it 17 years ago. And from a residential side with the home builders, and Builders Guild gives us a structure for doing that. And we're we'd love to see builders, always build more homes, but to build a quality construction program is challenging on the residential side. But this step with Thompson, it's the first step that Jason's group bid on it. I want to say, Seth, how many different bids did you receive on that? It was 15 guys look at it. What was the number?
Yeah, we had about 15. We sent it out to 92 across the state, but 15 responded.
That is fantastic. Seth and Jim Buhacker deserve a lot of credit there for helping build the construction capacity that's bringing a quality group like Thompson here. They are world class, and yesterday's meeting was evident of that. Just having the ability to have line item analysis and value engineering recommendations so that we could get our costs back towards the budget was helped me feel confident that, the adults have shown up and we're going to do it. We've been in great shape on the residential side for many, many years, but on construction or commercial projects, it's just another animal, and you need to have that type of large firm expertise coming in. So thank you, Jason, for being here.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
And Jason, I didn't realize you were an owner here as well. I thought you were just with the contracting firm. So glad to.
No, I've been there, and love the community. So just excited to be a partner as far as that building, hopefully future ones. And I've been in construction my entire life, I guess over 20 years and 15 years here in Oklahoma. And to be able to be part of this project is just good for my heart. Put my heart and soul into it. So
good.
I just glad to be part of it. So appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Other questions?
Hey, Grant. Stephen Fader, 78 Pistache. Great to be here. We've been here a little over a year now. We're from Tulsa.
Great.
Couple questions of curiosity. Some great stuff happening down at the marina. A lot of construction, a lot of activity. Can you give a little update on what's going on there?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thanks, Stephen. The marina is, from the beginning, I'll tell you what's happening now, but I'll also kind of put it into context for how we've thought about the marina over the years, Stephen. When we first did the master plan, we looked and thought, where can we put the marina? First, do you do private individual boat docks that line the shoreline, or do you have one concentrated place where you bring all of the energy, all of the boat slip capacity into one spot so that you can leave the rest of the shoreline intact and untouched? And that's what we chose. We thought it was a better move in terms of sustainability and the long-term beauty of the lake to consolidate that into one spot. We had to work through a long process with the Corps of Engineers that took 7 years from our first meeting until we had our lease done with the Corps of Engineers from 2008 to 2015. That leased 420 acres from the Corps of Engineers to the Town of Carlton Landing. In order to do that, we had to do two things. One is form a municipality so we could have a public-to-public relationship with the Corps. Two is we had to do what's called an environmental impact study. I think that's what the EIS stands for, and rewrite the whole shoreline management plan for the whole lake. So there is 800 miles of shoreline, and from 2011 to 2013, this involved an act of Congress to fund several $1 million for this EIS and shoreline management plan revision process that took a couple years. We got all that done because when we first bought the land and actually built the first homes, all of the shoreline here was zoned fish and wildlife protection, and we didn't have the ability to even create a footpath down to the water. And so it took several years to work through that process. When we made that decision on where to put the marina, we chose the cove that we did because in the summertime, the winds are coming out of the south, and in the wintertime, they're coming out of the north. So you really need protection on both the north and the south so that your marina is not exposed to those straight line winds that can come and take it off kilter. That cove provides that in really good form. A few weeks ago, there was a lot of storms that were rolling through, and Evergreen Marina here on Lake Eufaula took significant damage because they didn't have that same kind of protection. So we did that. We did a underwater topography analysis to see if we'd have to dredge that cove. We figured out a way to make it fit. The Corps gave us permission to go up to 300 slips, and we will build that out over time. We plan to get there in just a couple more years to get up to 300 slips. Currently, I think the total number that we have is 168, and Seth or anyone can correct me on that. We just expanded, or in the process of expanding, and we'll have this completed by early May, I believe.
That's right, Grant. That's
Okay.
right. Early
Yeah.
May.
Early May. You know what the dock count is, the slip count?
Oh goodness, I think that we're adding 76.
Okay.
Yeah, I can
So
confirm that.
we were at 168 before, and I think we're going up to 230 or something like that.
Right.
That's kind of the number. So in addition to that, we finally got approval from the Corps to add a couple of great things. One is a ship store that'll give us goods and services, fishing, tackle, candy, beer, Coke, some Carlton Landing branded swag. I wasn't terribly excited about going in and having to run the ship store from a retail management standpoint. That would be more of a heavy lift, but I knew it was really important. And we formed a strategic partnership with Ugly John's. And so Ugly John's, Jeremy Mullen is my contact there. The Mullen family has owned Ugly John's for a couple generations. They've got locations from, I think, Lake Austin up to Grand Lake and up into, I think, Beaver, and I don't want to misrepresent that. They might be at Lake of the Ozarks, but they've got several locations. And Ugly John's came in and said, okay, a few things that we want to do. One, we want to supply boats to the boat club. And so the Sea Rays that we bought and the pontoons that we bought, that is Ugly John's. Really have an aligned, structured partnership with the boat club to say, we're going to provide the boat club with great boats. After they use them for a couple years, we can take them back and we can sell them as used. But financially, it makes sense for the boat club to be able to get into boats. Since COVID, boat prices have gone up just like used car prices, shot through the roof, and Ugly John's is taking care of us. And I just really appreciate their long-term perspective towards the relationship. Second thing, they're going to be selling boats. And so if you have a chance to ever get into one of their higher end boats, I've had a chance to drive one of their Nautiques, that wake boat, that is just, it's an amazing piece of machinery and technology, and what it can do on the water is really incredible. So I know there's a bit of an arms race down on the marina with people owning boats. Ugly John's wants to feed into that and satisfy everyone's itch for a great boat, and pontoon boats as well. Another thing that they're going to be doing, though, is in operating the store, they're going to be selling fuel. We got approval for fuel at our marina, which is great because for the last 10 years, our boat club has had to ferry boats back and forth to number 9, which takes about an hour for a guy to go over there, wait for a slip, fill up with gas, come back. It makes it pretty inefficient. Now we're going to have, I think it's 3 fueling slips there, either 2 or 3 with either 4 or 6 hoses. But Ugly John's is going to be running that ship store for us. Their staff, they're going to be managing it. They've done that at other lakes. And they also plan to set up more of a fixed base operation for retail boat sales and boat servicing on the land there next to the marina. The marina that you see today is a few components that have been built towards a vision of what we call the Marina Center. About 10 years ago, Tom Lowe, who's my connection with DPZ, came out and laid out a plan that's a fantastic plan for how this marina can be realized. I'm going to see if I can pull it up here, just so I can show you guys. But there is a great vision for how the marina could be more than just a place to park boats, but could actually be something that draws people, that it's an event place, it's a venue for sporting events, for outdoor events. And it helps connect people to the lake in a really meaningful way. And it also integrates, I think one of the challenges when you're dealing with the Corps of Engineers, a a lot of times it will look like here's the development over here, and here is the marina or the core property on the other side. What we want to do is integrate that in a seamless way so that people can see, they don't see a line of division between the two. Here's the picture for what we have of the marina center. You can see an oval shaped line that was actually patterned after a great historic urban city center in Rome. In that, you've got some pickleball courts, maybe a softball field, maybe a soccer field. I think we actually have room for the soccer field and the pickleball courts. You've got some pavilions that provide some protection from the shade. On the north end of that, the far end, you can see that you've got buildings that are built that incorporate parking, but also look a lot like Carlton Landing. So the buildings are closer to the street. The parking is tucked behind. There's a large tower that can be kind of a really identifying focal point there, something you could see from across the lake. And then you get out into the cove, and you can see here, instead of just the walkway, but you've got buildings that are on either side of the walkway that kind of act like pillars or columns, sentries to identify the entrance into that marina. As you go down, you get to the ship store, which will be red as shown here. And then you start to get into all the storage space for the marina where the boats are parked. So the boats are part of it. It's a critical part of it. The lake is a critical part of Carlton Landing, but from the beginning, we've always said, let's not just be where the lake is the key amenity. It's the one amenity. Let's let community be the first amenity. Two other things that I just show here, just to give you a sense of what could be to come. One is in the peninsula that's on the north side of the marina, you have opportunities for RV camping. This was permitted in the Corps of Engineers lease. Additionally, floating cabins are permitted on the cove to the north of that. And also you'd have camping and glamping facilities. We get asked a lot, will you have a boat ramp? And yes, it's possible that we could have a boat ramp. It would probably be back here, closer to the newly extended Stevens Road, and that would keep our boat trailer traffic from coming down into the marina center and let all the trailers kind of stay up here to the northwest. So that's a few of the things to expect. Stevens Road, I believe, is very close to being finished. The town is doing that project. They've had some real issues with the contractor and are just trying to get it to 100%. But I have not had a confirmation yet that Stevens Road is officially open. You might be able to make your way through it, but official recommendation would be don't drive on it until it's fully open and officially dedicated.
What quick follow-up? What about water, sewer? I mean, one of the things at the marina, there's no restroom facilities other than the outhouses.
Yeah.
Is there a plan for that in the near term, or is that even looking at the boathouse or the ship store? I don't see water service there.
Yep. Yeah. So good question, Stephen. So for this year, there will not be water for this year. One of the things, and the reason is for us to take water there, it ends up being $350,000 to $400,000 to get infrastructure to the ship store and to the marina. Now, what you get into is, okay, how do you handle the need for facilities in the interim? And we're going to use the porta-johns. We're going to wrap them in actually doing a trailer. I said, let's do something nicer than the porta-johns. We're going to get a trailer that's like what you'd find at a golf tournament, but that's the short-term solution. And we hope that we don't have to be there any longer than necessary. When we get into additional buildings and the marina center vision being realized, which I think can happen in a few years, not decades, but a few years, then you'll see all the infrastructure. And once the infrastructure is there, we've had discussions about having a restaurant down floating on the water, restaurants on the land. We have the ability, if it supports the marina center vision, and if it enhances public access to lake recreation, it's the language that we use with the Corps of Engineers, we have the ability to do a lot of those other types of supporting uses, from retail, restaurant, service, maintenance, et cetera. So,
Thanks. One quick follow up, and this is association question, so you can tell me I need to go somewhere else. But any status on the parking? That was such a big deal last year. It seems like haven't heard much. I know spring break was last couple of weeks, and it seems like parking was an issue a little bit again. Anything anybody can update on that?
there is a parking policy that was put into place by the association. And when you say it was a big deal, do you mean it was a big deal in terms of frustration with people not parking right?
Well, we were here last year,
or the
and
parking penalties.
yeah. And I say, so just a little more context.
Yeah.
Last year, not long after we became homeowners, I know the parking permit and there was conversation about rolling out the new parking plan, and that was intended to control parking. And actually even the ticketing was going to generate enough money to fund the parking program and the thing. And so that died down. We registered, everybody seemed to register. And then it still feels like on peak weekends that parking is still a little bit of an issue. And I don't see a lot of citations or parking stuff. So I'm just curious, how's it working?
I'll defer. Well, and I'll give you my sense of it, and then I'll defer it to Stephen Coville, who's going to be the guy that is driving that with the association. So how it's working, I believe, Carlton Landing owners, by and large, from what I've heard, are not creating any issues on parking. Okay. So from what I've heard, that's not the issue. The issue happens to be more people that are not familiar with how to park, where to park. And so they're coming on a short-term basis. And so communication to those guests is critical, that we make sure that either if it's a short-term rental operator, that they're communicating well and they're making sure that people understand where they can park, and they're giving it. I think you got to tell people things 5 times sometimes before they really understand it. They're making it very clear. Second issue where there's a lot of people that are parking in ways that create issues is contractors. And that could be under a builder as a subcontractor, or it could be a homeowner hires someone to come out and do handyman services, and it's just not communicated. So I think if we could get contractors and short-term guests to understand how to park and where to park, I think that would solve probably 80% of the issues that the association's running into with that. My sense on it, it's twofold. On one hand, I want people to have a great experience in Carlton Landing. I don't want people to leave with a bad taste in their mouth. I requested that, that there be warnings and multiple warnings before there's enforcement or penalties. On the other hand, I can tell you that communities that are more matured and evolved, parking is one of the biggest issues. And it's one of the biggest challenges that if you're not really hard and tight and have a very structured and clear way of parking, it can become really detrimental to the growth and the experience and everyone's shared experience. So I think on one hand, it's like, yeah, you want to have grace, you want people to have a good time, but on the other hand, you just know the potential for what parking could become. And that's an issue. Clay, it's good to see you. Hey.
Hey, I just wanted to say about parking.
Can you, hey, Clay, I can barely hear you. Can you try to speak into the mic or hear it? Thank you. Can you guys hear Clay all right? Not really. You got to yell.
Hold on. Can you hear me at all?
I can hear you just very faintly.
Barely.
Go for it.
All right. Yeah, a lot of people just don't understand what goes on with new urbanism, and that's the thing that makes our town great. Following traditional town building parameters. Greatest obstacle to good urbanism is parking rates.
Yeah.
And folks are leaving areas to come here and street here, and they've invested here a lot because this atmosphere that exists, because we have these parking rates really a problem. And when you think about we have to deal with some parking stress week year. There's out of the whole year, the rest of the year is great. So it's important to, and we don't want to sabotage what vision is because things get crowded.
Yeah. Yeah.
I understand that there's compromise. I feel like we're doing a good job to, to walk. It's important for people to understand. You don't want Carlton Landing to follow the same template as other towns because it wouldn't be Carlton Landing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or is that concerned?
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I think, the approach that, and I'll share what Stephen has said to me as we've talked about the parking. And in fact, Stephen emailed me I think there's a draft of the parking policy that's being discussed with the association board now to revise the current policy. Stephen sent it to me to get my feedback on it, and I will give that to him in the next couple days. But it's still in discussion. We want to get policy right so that there's a reasonableness to it, so that it accomplishes the intent without creating collateral damage, unintended collateral damage. I think there's two things, Clay, as you were talking about parking regulation, there's two sides of it. It's like on one side, we're a community that's designed around people, not around automobiles. And so we prioritize the pedestrian experience. We prioritize the way the city or the buildings front the streets and tuck cars behind. We're also a dense community where there's not a lot of extra room. You don't have extra open space or flexibility to just park freely. And that's the thing that looks beautiful is like, we are not a place that requires, 10 parking spaces for every bedroom. And so there needs to be adequate parking, but there also needs to be an expectation that that parking might be a block away from where you ultimately need to be for an event or something like that. There needs to be adequate parking on the lot, on the private parcel, so that there's 1 or 2 parking spaces minimum for every home on that parcel. But then that also means that those spaces should actually be used for parking cars, not for parking a golf cart and then the car's parked out in the street or, in front of the house on the common area. So all those are considerations, and there's a balance there. So parking will be, hey, I'll just tell you, parking's going to be an issue, and you'll have people that are haters on it, and you'll have people that are fighting for it. Progressively becoming more and more of an issue, I believe, over time. As we build out, and especially as you start to bring in nature center facilities with a group of 500 that could come there, all those people have to get here somehow, and they're going to park somewhere. And so parking becomes more of an issue if it's not handled with care.
Hey Grant, this is Jason again.
Hey,
Just
Jason.
wanted to know if there's any parking lots in the master plan for around some neighborhoods more towards the houses versus just around kind of the residence club that we have
Yeah.
the main parking lot now. Is there going to be more parking lots throughout the community so that there are spaces?
Good question, Jason. So I will tell you, I'm going to pull up something and do a screen share real quick. We did a study to say, okay, where is parking available in Carlton Landing? Seth, if you have this before I do, then you can show it. I'm pulling it up here. From 2020, we did this study. Okay. So in 2020, we looked at it, and this is a rough, if you guys would like, Stephen Coville, I'll direct you to him. He has this in a lot better format than what I'm looking at right now. I'm looking at the kind of the draft that showed a hand-drawn sketch of it. But these are all the areas that we identified. So this is the chicken scratch version. I'm sorry for not having a more polished version. So you've got the Block 10 parking lot in red that's shown right here. We would also add the parking just for the nature center specifically. And so we've got that area. And then we've got approval from the Corps to do additional parking to the west, although Daryl Nieto is talking to the town about doing additional lodge, like a motor lodge, that would service the nature center right in here. So possibility. The red is shown where you'd have head-end parking or a parking lot. The orange is where you have parallel parking, and the blue, and that's existing. And then the blue was additional parallel parking that could be added. When we went through here and we added on these different locations, up here you see a red that's off of the extended Redbud. So it'd be northeast of Passage Park and on Redbud Street. We thought about making that parking because to the east of that, right in this, is the location for the next community pool. But as you go on up, you see a lot of blue lines where we could do parallel parking. We thought about possibly doing parking in the middle of Block 21 right here. That's not a decision that's been made or finalized, but it's just something that's on the table. As we went through this, though, we looked and we said, what are the total number of parking spaces that we can accommodate in Carlton Landing? And in 2021, we ran the math, and what we actually did is measured out how big each location is, and how many parking spaces we could have there. And we engaged a civil engineer to do the work. Let me pull that up here real quick and I'll just give you an answer. So if I can get it to stay on, there we go. Okay. So here's the work from 2021. We identified A through Z, these different locations. Number of parking spaces was 2,146. So we have the ability, and then we are also identifying what's the average length of space. Is striping required? Is signage required? Is construction required? What would the paving or the material be? And then you get into a cost estimate process and a cost per space. I think Jim Boohacker or Stephen Coville has a more updated version of this, but that was 2,100 parking spaces additional beyond what's on private property. And so that would give me a lot of comfort knowing that we can park everybody that needs to be parked. It might be a half block away from where they need to be, but that's assuming that there's 1 or 2 parking spaces on every private property that's taking care of them. And if they're doing a family reunion, they might have to, carpool or find a place to park that's a block away. So 13 minutes. Who's up?
Well, Grant, I might as well go. It wouldn't be a call without Heather Scott saying a few words, right?
That's right.
There you go. Sorry, I'm still in my PJs. I think you saw I have grandkids. So if you hear some noise in the background, sorry. Heather Scott, 83 Lower Greenway. Our porch has a sign on it that says X marks the Scotts. We did that intentionally so that all of our neighbors would come by and see us. We've been here since 2014. We absolutely love the community. And this is our full-time residence now, although I do some very limited contract work in Oklahoma City. I have officially retired, and so we are here and super excited to be here. So I have a couple of follow-up things, and I just want to clarify. You mentioned 1 or 2 parking spots, and I think that under the design review documents, it says 2 per home, and I think that in the past, you all have maybe loosened those requirements, especially for some of these smaller bend/borough type developments. But I think that you all have now, just for the benefit of everybody on the call, you all have now committed to keep the standard of at least 2 spaces, unless you're going to try to do something different, at which point you'd probably come forward and talk to folks about it. Am I understanding that right?
Well, Heather, that's not how I remember it. So,
Okay.
And that's fine. We need to look to the parking policy, look at what's in writing. Whatever's in writing is what we've committed to. I thought it was 2 for single family detached homes over a certain size, and on smaller stuff that it was 1. But, when we were looking at the God's House project, we did not do 2
Right.
for that. And we went through the planning process God's House project is a project that's gone through approval. It's been planned, it's been designed, it's been envisioned ad nauseum, and now we're waiting on DEQ to give us a green light to proceed with infrastructure expansion. So, Heather, that's not how I remember it. I don't want to make that statement so that I
Sure.
make a commitment to it, but
Right.
but happy to abide by anything that we have committed to. So I said 1 or 2.
Well, and that's where that conversation came up. And so we were kind of pushing for 2, or lots of people were pushing for 2. And we said, well, that one maybe doesn't make sense. And so we're willing to go, of course, with
Right,
not
right.
necessarily. So I agree with you on that God's House project and some of these smaller things.
Yep.
You mentioned, and I agree with Clay a lot of what he said about the parking. I do believe what you've said though is, and what I believe, and I've done a lot of work on that and talked to people about parking, and what I have heard when I've called, it wasn't Seaside that I spoke with, it was probably Watercolor or Rosemary Beach, I'm not sure, but one of those entities, I actually did kind of a deep dive with them, and they mentioned that had they had it to do over again, that they would have fixed parking in the beginning.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
essentially why they're smaller, that is where they had the opportunity to fix it and they didn't. And they kept kind of shoving it off. So while I don't agree necessarily with 100% of the parking policy, I don't think I don't think it's renters trying to be bad people.
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, I think that they bring a lot of economy into our community, and so we need to celebrate them, and we need to look for ways to help them.
Yep.
And so, but on the other hand, when they do park all along Lower Greenway on the park, they are ruining our sod, which is costing our HOA money.
Yeah.
They are ruining our irrigation systems. I mean, I've been on staff here at Carlton Landing and understand how much we spend on irrigation. And so things of that nature. And so I want to kind of really talk about that balance a little bit and go, there's got to be a balance there where we want to celebrate this growth,
Yeah.
but yet we've got to effectuate clearer communication. To that end,
I agree with you 100%, Heather.
I am just going to be perfectly honest. I think it's all homeowners, and I know it's going to be recorded, and I know it's going to go out there and people are going to hear this, but at the end of the day, as we talk about the HOA, we have 4 full-time employees. And where we seem to have some problem, and people just need some guidance and direction, is Friday night, Saturday, Sunday mornings. And so why of those 4 full-time employees do we not have people working when those people are having problems? Why do we not have somebody riding around in a golf cart emptying trashes? Why aren't the bathrooms for the pools, rather than have somebody come in at 5 a.m. clean the bathrooms? Why don't we have them do it at 9:00 at night
Hey,
on a golf cart?
and Heather, on that, look, I had a conversation with Stephen Coville this week. And I said, hey, in discussions from homeowners, they've said, why aren't people here on the weekends when the folks are here? Let's look at schedules. Stephen said, hey, we have people that are working 7 days a week. Okay. So now I would direct you, go talk to Stephen. I don't know what their schedules are, but Stephen would say that, that conversation, you need to let him respond to you, because I've heard those comments of saying no one's here from the association on the weekend. And Stephen, when asked this week point blank, he disagrees and he says, no, they are. I don't know the details of that. The Stephen Reel is on the executive board. Carrie Hawthorne's on the executive board. Seth is on the executive board, and Stephen Coville is the GM. So those are the people that we can talk to about that. And I also know, just because I've heard the arguments, like the association does have 4 full-time employees. I believe Corey, whose birthday I think is today, is a full-time employee. So if you see Corey, wish him a happy birthday. What you're looking at there is you're looking at something where Stephen Coville has determined, and the board has confirmed, that it's cheaper to hire a full-time employee than to pay a contractor for a scope of service. And so they feel like it's in the economic best interest of the association to have someone in that position as opposed to contracting it out to a pool service company or to a additional ground maintenance company. Okay. So on that kind of stuff, I'm going to,
So
I don't know. I don't
I
have,
will.
but
So
I'm directed to step in on
I
this.
want to follow up with your statement. First of all, it's my understanding Stephen Reel has taken a leave of absence from the HOA for 6 to 9 months, so he is not available to us any longer. Stephen Covell says that, just in true transparency, he has personally told me that he acts at the direction of the board. And when I've talked to Seth, Seth says he takes the recommendations of Stephen. And so I feel like I'm kind of getting a
No, there's-
circular motion. Nobody is saying, Heather,
Hey.
I mean, what I want is somebody just to say, we totally disagree with you. We have a security issue that I believe we could have one of those four full-time employees on a golf cart at 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock doing other things with Carlton Landing branded merchandise. That's nobody. I've probably asked 10 people in the last month, do you know who Corey or CW is? And none of them know who he is. And so let's put them in some branded merchandise on a golf cart, actually doing some duties. They have very specific duties when they're here on Saturday and Sunday.
Heather,
And it doesn't involve those things.
I hear
Sorry.
you. If I no, here's the deal. This time I want this time to be available so that I can share something I can contribute to. Now, Seth, he is going to, and Seth, I'm not going to speak for you, you're right here, but you're going to go, and Stephen Covell, one thing we've had an important kind of like come to Jesus meeting on this week is just about communication and the importance of Stephen Covell being a spokesperson for the association. Stephen does work on behalf of the board. Seth has my proxy. So Seth is not just deferring to whatever Stephen wants. We look at a recommendation from the manager, but there's no like, hey, whatever Stephen says, we're just going to trust that recommendation. And I don't think that was Seth's representation, but
I don't want to misrepresent. I think that he maybe there's a disconnect. Having said that, I think the two issues, the people that pay into the HOA are the homeowners, and the two issues that we consistently see issues about with the homeowners is security and parking.
Okay.
Those issues happen in the evenings and on the weekends, and I just don't understand why we don't let one of those people do some of their other duties while on a golf cart. That's the last I'll say.
Stephen will see this video because he's posting it onto Appfolio for everybody. So he'll have those comments and that's heard. So,
Okay. Thank you.
for your parking
Grant,
comments, for your parking comments, Heather, you and I are in agreement. I think we're in 100% agreement on the importance of addressing it early. So,
Yeah.
Okay. Who else had a comment?
Hey, Grant, this is Jason. What was the plan that you were talking about? I don't know if I caught the name, God's plan or something, or what?
So it's a thing. Thanks for asking, Jason. It's a thing called God's house, which is an old concept from European, 1500s, where churches would build housing and in that case, it was for the poor. What we were looking at doing is building it possibly for full-time residents, workforce that were in Carlton Landing, that wanted to live in Carlton Landing, or people that wanted to age in place and retire in Carlton Landing. So it would be designed as an accessible unit as well, but it's built around the center of the block. If you ask Seth, he will get it for you. We've got a plan. It's a really cool plan. It's just in a district immediately north of the main drain, north of Hill Street, that would be across the street from the church. We're looking at doing that as a structured brick development. We have not had the green light to move forward on that phase of development yet from the DEQ, so it's pending that. Okay. So, and it would include, I think 14 units, and 14 units that majority of them would be under 1,000 square feet, and some would be under 1,400 square feet.
All right. Appreciate it.
Cool
Thank you.
design. It's a cool design. I think that could take, 10 or 15 minutes of its own time, which we've given it its own time in the past. But then when we ran into the development moratorium that held up development of that, I don't want to throw out and cast vision for stuff that we can't actually execute on in a timely manner, because then people think you're just all blow and no go. And I'd rather just hold it back until we've got a green light with the DEQ. So
Appreciate the explanation.
you guys, So here's where we reach the 1 hour mark. I'm happy to go on a little bit longer if there's something, or we could create a hard stop and say, let's reschedule another time to go more. Is there something that's pressing and urgent today that we need to address? Hearing none, I'm going to say have a great Saturday. The next time that we're going to get together, instead of the last, I said when we started this session, I said typically it's going to be on the last Saturday of each month. Next month, this is going to have to run on the 19th instead of the 26th of April, because I'm going to be in Haiti and Dominican Republic without internet service on a mission trip on the 26th. So if we could go on the 19th, and I'll send out another invite and post it on the Facebook page, but 9:00 a.m. to 10:00 a.m. on April 19th, which is a significant day for Oklahoma. So, but appreciate you guys. Thank you for being here, and thanks for being part of Carlton Landing, and we'll do it again. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.